Welcome to The Well. I'm Anson Mount.
And I am Branan and Anson.
And today we are on my roof deck in Toronto, listening to our neighbors conveniently cut slate with diamond saw at this exact moment. And anyways, we're here. We're here. I'm here because I'm shooting third season of Star Trek, and Branan decided to come up and give me a visit.
And I'm up here because he's shooting third season of Star Trek.
Yeah.
So nothing's changed. And right now, you know, this is a new format. I feel like we're testing out like a morning news show. Would you like to give us what's going on in sports?
No, but I'm interested to hear what you thought about when you saw the sets.
I thought the set construction was just absolutely phenomenal. We got to meet the production designer, right?
Yeah.
What's his name?
Jonathan Lee.
Jonathan Lee. I doubt he's watching this, but if you are, and I got a chance to shake his hand and meet him and say I'm just absolutely impressed and stunned by the detail. I mean, that's a beautiful set, man. Gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah, and he's a real craftsman.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. The detail is incredible. The attention to detail in the show is just fantastic, and nice people all around.
Yeah, really, really lovely people. I was very happy to see them accept you with open arms. Most people don't.
It's me then.
It's you.
It's me that charms them into behaving.
Well, no, I mean, you saw the AR wall.
Oh my gosh, I was almost buried the lead. The AR wall is. Oh, I had a couple. I nerded out over a bunch of things. The AR wall was unbelievably cool. I never actually seen one in action. And it's just, I mean, I can't start talking about this because I'll nerd out about it, you know, for the next hour. But just the number of production problems that it solves, not having to make keys, the fact that your practical lighting comes from the actual set, the fact that actors don't have to just imagine everything. Yeah. I mean, all of that stuff. I mean, it was cool that day that we...
And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, the AR wall is this giant set we work on where the walls and the ceiling are all high-definition screens and the CG is done before you actually get there. So it's like walking onto the planet.
Yeah, yeah, so you don't have to imagine anything. And it was kind of like a little bit of old and new, best of both worlds for me because I'd never seen the AR wall in action before, and that was incredibly cool. And then I got to meet the president of Legacy FX. And, you know, he had some beautiful animatronic stuff going on, some animatronic creature work. And I'm a sucker, I'm a nerd for that stuff. And he was very cool and let me get to operate the neck and head tilt movements and stuff on the creature on the RC remote control thing. And I think I got a little too interested, and the director kind of like stuck his head between me and the remote, and I'm like, hey, we're shooting. No, we gotta, thanks. I'm like, but I'm having too much fun. Can I just do it, please?
Yeah.
So this is The Drop. You want to give the spiel about The Drop?
Yeah, this is the segment we do where we just let you guys know about everything that we've been reading and watching and listening to so that you can enjoy that as well. Yeah, they're not our normal episodes, but they're just a chance to catch up with you guys and a chance for us to catch up with each other. This is normally the conversations we'd be having anyways, and now we try to save them up for this moment.
Yeah, and it's nice that we're actually together in the same spot. We've all been on screen for the past like 6 months. Zooming.
The world has been Zoomified.
Yeah, it's really nice to be up here, man, and hang out. And
absolutely.
See you, I guess.
Do you want to kick us off? What do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to start with music because I started listening to this. God, when did I run into him? Moondog. Do you know who this is?
No.
It's such an interesting story. He was born 1920s, I think, in Kansas. An accident with a blasting cap on a farm left him blind. And back then, if you're blind, they didn't really know what to do with you. It was not the same kind of world we live in today, where there's lots of you know, help for people with disabilities. This is before the Americans with Disabilities Act, so you were kind of not necessarily left to fend for yourself, but society didn't quite know what to do with those people. He was already had a predilection for music But back then, that's frequently what happened to people that were blind. They'd be like, "Oh, well, I guess you're going to music school because your ear still works, so off you go." It's kind of like how things like Blind Boys of Alabama started and that kind of thing. So he was blinded at 16, studied music composition, and eventually made his way to New York City, where he became known as the Viking of 6th Avenue. From like the 50s, I think, to the early 60s, I think was that period. He's incredibly tall, like 6'6" or something, with his long white beard and long white hair. And he would stand on the corner and recite poetry and sell his sheet music. A lot of people didn't know that he was a musician. People knew him as that kind of eccentric guy. And so that people wouldn't think that he was a monk or like a Christian zealot or something. That's why he started wearing the Viking hat. And carrying like this long robe and a staff. I mean, I'll put a picture up. He was a striking figure. So anyone going to work for like 10 years on 6th Avenue would see him.
Huh.
And so he was just a fixture. But most people knew him for reciting poetry. He would perform some of his music on instruments that he had invented. And I think a lot of people kind of underestimate how advanced, how sophisticated a composer he was, because he just wrote constantly. But I was going to play just one clip to give you an idea. I'm not going to play the whole song. And it starts off very simple. He's putting the sound of screaming pigs into it. So he kind of lulls you into this kind of a very simple, almost childish sort of thing. But I just want to listen just for a second how furious this piano composition and performance is at the end. Waging total war. If the only food were none, you would eat no more. All the pygmy edibles wish you pygmies well. Eat your way to heaven or eat your way to hell.
Wow.
I'll put up some more links of some videos and stuff. He eventually moved to Germany, and people thought he was homeless. He kind of looked like he was homeless. He wasn't, but he did kind of have to rely a lot on people's kindness. And he had some fans in Germany, and he went over there and kind of moved in with a couple there, and that's where he lived out his days.
Wow.
Composing constantly.
Wow.
Highly recommend.
Well, I'll come in now with my music recommendation. Is I sent it to you.
Yes.
Hermanos Gutiérrez. These two brothers who are Swiss, actually, but I believe their mother was Ecuadorian. Yeah, you want to pull it up? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Their mother, I believe, was an Ecuadorian, so they spent their childhoods traveling back to Ecuador frequently to see family, and I guess they grew up with this kind of love of Ecuadorian music and decided to try and master it. First time I started listening to it, I immediately assumed that it was South American, that these guys were from, I don't know, South or Central America. And it is I don't know how to describe it. It's two guitars, ambient-ish, but I can't stop listening to it. I'm playing this stuff all the time. They really know how to groove on a theme, you know?
How can you not like that?
Yeah.
That's like, it's an insult to call something easy listening, but that is easy to listen to. Like, and the guy has such a touch on the guitar. It's total tonal control and a lightness too. Wow, you know, I dug it. We listened to it while we were doing your costume fitting.
Yeah.
Did you find this?
The costume designers on the show, they were listening to this, and I was like, "Who is this?" And then I immediately sent it to you. I was like, "This is great stuff."
Yeah, it's hard to turn off. Like once you get started, it's just like it puts you in such a good mood, relaxed mood. You're just like, I'll stick with this for a bit.
Yeah. So Hermanos Gutiérrez, it's Brothers Gutiérrez. We'll put a link for it up on our show notes at our website, so you can find it. What else you got?
The streaming series, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, with Donna Glover and Maya Erskine.
I'm Jane.
I'm John.
Love and happiness.
Banking card and marriage registration.
Something that can make you do
We're married.
Yeah, I guess we're married.
But it's essentially, it's a story that was done before, kind of sensational. It was, Brangelina, right? That was back in the days of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. Mm-hmm. They did it. That's a different kind of a thing. That was all like, action and sexy and stuff. And this is almost like a Black Mirror episode. It's extent of, a whole season worth of it.
Weird software.
And it's two weirdos, two loners. And you watch as they take this job to become hitmen, and you watch how their lives are secret. They can't talk to anybody but each other. And at first, their marriage starts as a cover, because that's a great cover. People will not pay as much attention to them as the theory. But then since they can't turn to anyone else, it starts becoming a real relationship. And you can imagine a relationship that's based on lying to everyone else in your life starts having problems. So I didn't think they were going to pull off the relationship part of it. So, because the whole plot is so contrived. Yeah. That's a stretch. But they're so good, and I will watch Donna Glover and Maya Erskine do just about anything.
Absolutely. I love both of those actors, and we've recommended multiple things that they're. We were just talking about Atlanta last night about how it's probably the best TV show of its time.
Yeah, I think so. Going back over that with you. Just remind us, like, after we started talking to each other about it, we realized how memorable so much of that show is, how original, how creative. And Mr. and Smith has a similar feel. It's not, like it's about hitmen, you expect more action and that kind of thing, but they tend to kind of cut around that. It's kind of funny. Like, here comes the moment where they're going to go do the crazy thing, and then it just cuts back to them, like in their apartment, like covered in blood. Just like, oh my God, that did not go as we planned, you know. And they're totally freaked out, you know. And it's got real quickly. It's got some great guest cast members: Parker Posey, Paul Dano, Ron Perlman.
Wow.
Alexander Skarsgård,
Wow.
Dave Attell for some reason, John Turturro.
Yeah.
Anyway, I really recommend it. I loved it.
That's great.
And then really quickly, just I want to get it out of the way. I have one more, Tokyo Vice, which is on Max.
Jack, you did not come to Tokyo in pursuit of one man. There are other stories, other crimes to be exposed. That is your job.
Yeah.
Produced by Michael Mann. It's
and my manager, Emily Gerson-Sains. Yeah. This is actually Emily's son, who passed away unfortunately a couple of years back. He had sent the book to Emily saying we should make this a TV show, and they started talking about it. And after he passed, Emily decided, okay, this has got to happen.
And then Michael Mann picked up the ball, and I think he directed the first episode or two. And it's based on a true story about a American journalist working for a Japanese newspaper and getting mixed up in Yakuza activities. So it's a police thriller, but it's a real lesson in writing if you're interested in that kind of thing. It does a great job doing all the sort of what they call B storylines. They're not the main storyline, but to flesh out the characters and learn more about them. Sometimes that stuff feels like filler, and it doesn't help the A story very well. Not the case here. It all feeds together into a beautifully woven story.
Yeah, I got to pick that back up again. I got busy once I started watching it. We got to finish it.
And Ansel
Darling,
Elgort.
my wife is operating the camera right now. We have to finish watching Tokyo Vice.
And Ansel Elgort is perfectly cast as a person who does not fit in at all.
No, yeah.
Because he's like, 6'4" or something. He's the tallest dude, and he's in Japan. He's barely fits in the frame with everyone else. You're like, man, that guy is a fish out of water. But he learned Japanese for the show. And I think he did a great job.
Yeah.
What have you got?
I gave to you. I told you about this already, and I gave this to you, the MANIAC. My wife, who is operating the camera, gave this to me for my birthday, and I absolutely loved it. It's by Benjamin Labatut, who's a Dutch author who lives in Chile. He actually wrote a bestseller called When We Cease to Understand the World, which I have not read yet, but I'm going to. This is his most recent outing, and this is, God, I don't even know how to describe it. It's kind of historical fiction, and it's basically 3 different stories, and the first one is about Paul Ehrenfest, which is a tragic story of this I believe he's Austrian physicist. And I don't want to spoil it for you, so I'll just move on and tell you about the second book, which is the biggest, which is about John von Neumann, or actually Johnny von Neumann. His name was never John von Neumann, because when it came time to get an Americanized name, he went with Johnny. I had heard about John von Neumann. I didn't really know a lot about him, but as it turns out, he is the guy that other geniuses say was the smartest man of the 20th century. He pioneered so many fields of thought, from game theory to set theory to formula theory to fluid dynamics to artificial intelligence. He's the guy who started that whole thinking, and digital life. The ramifications of what this guy did in his work are just now first they were felt with the atomic bomb, because it couldn't have happened without him. But we're still feeling the ramifications of his work, and I think we're going to be feeling them for centuries more.
Does he speculate as to why he's not a household name with that kind of influence?
I don't know.
Is it because he was spread out over so many disciplines?
It didn't. Maybe, but I mean, this is the guy who, when they were working on the atomic bomb, he would drive. He didn't stay at Los Alamos because he was too busy. He would come in and he would go from one department to the next for 15, 20 minutes, helping them solve one problem after another, and then he would go off. He pioneered the idea of digital life and human crossover into machine. He's just wild mind. And then and he was also very self-destructive.
That might be why.
And then his the third story in here is just a very simple but well-written account of the match between Lee Sedol and AlphaGo, the artificial intelligence that taught itself how to play the game of Go, which is infinitely more complex than chess. And by the time I got to the end of this book, I felt like I'd seen the ghost in the machine. I really, it's frightening where it puts you and puts us in the scheme of things. And it's really about, I think what it's concerned with is our capacity for self-destruction as a species, and that we latch onto things that could bring about our own demise. Obviously, the nuclear bomb is a big part of that story, but so is artificial intelligence. And just our inability to, it reminds me of that interview I saw. There's actually a Toronto-based firm that was working on deepfakes and had actually turned down a contract from the CIA. And the guy who was interviewing them, who were trying to perfect, they're trying to get all of the sort of like remnants of any sort of digital evidence that it was a deep fake out of the sound file, even though you couldn't hear the difference with human ears. And the guy was like, "Why are you trying to do that?" And the kid was like, "Because it's not perfect." There is something that we latch onto that can bring about our own demise that we just can't stop tinkering with.
Right.
Right,
because there's that, we want total control, and there's perfectionism. That seems to be part of the human spirit, but if I can, then I should. This is the reversal of Jeff Goldblum's line in Jurassic Park. Just because you can, you never stop to think if you should.
It makes me wonder that, from a theological, ontological perspective, if you want to operate from that point of view, if our whole reason to be here is to provide the biological machine crossover and then get out of the way.
If the point of DNA, the point of life is to perpetuate yourself and keep going, then yeah, we do want immortality, and that's what we're slowly inventing. Biological, defeating disease, extending life, and then after that, upload yourself to a...
That's another thing that von Neumann did, is he predicted DNA before we found evidence of it. He said, we're built on a code. Yeah. I guarantee you we're built on a code.
Yeah, the drive to not die, basically. And it can get, I think it may be getting out of hand, man.
Yeah, but great read. I highly recommend it. And I if you're into graphic novels at all, I occasionally am. I found this thing. It comes in 4 volumes. It's called The Department of Truth, and it is by, I wrote the names down so I wouldn't get them wrong. James Tynion or Tynion, James Tynion the Fourth, and illustrated by Martin Simmonds, who's a hell of an artist. And it's such a brilliant concept. I had to get it. So the idea is that if enough people start to believe a particular conspiracy theory, it starts to become true. And so it's told from an American intelligence perspective, and these departments that are trying to, they're in warfare that is about warping reality by manipulating mass thought. And it is so well written. I mean, it's a great concept to begin with, especially for right now. But the thought and the research that this Tynion guy put into this work is stunning. It's so thick with thought and ideas and implications of this, of our own capacity to believe bullshit or convince each other of total myth, and at least the way we construct reality around us has a tendency to follow bullshit sometimes. It's really, really well done, and unfortunately they haven't put out another volume, I think because they signed a development deal to turn this into a series, which I'm not sure what's happening with that, if anything, but really worth checking out the first four volumes of this. It's called The Department of Truth, and we'll put a link to it.
Yeah, that's a great title, Department of Truth. That does feel like the world we're living in right now. Information retrieval, that's Brazil, but it feels like this all belongs in the same world.
Yeah. That's all I got.
Well, this is something that we started talking about a few times. Oh, back to Star Trek, back to shooting. Y'all were shooting on when I was there, you're shooting on the VR wall, a scene that had a crazy amount of wind. And it was becoming like everyone was just talking about how much wind there was in this scene. And it was clearly kind of getting to everyone. Everyone was remarking on, like, those things are loud, they're drying out the actors' contacts, it gets to you on a level that you wouldn't quite maybe expect. And then I remembered this article from Emergence Magazine. It's free, it's online. Webby-winning Ellie Peabody and Emmy-nominated publication and creative studio exploring the threads connecting ecology, culture, and spirituality. And it's a fascinating project because if you go to their website, emergencemagazine.org, you will find podcasts, you will find short-form documentaries, YouTube channel, original essays, original research, poetry, photography. Remember, emergence is the concept of everything that's kind of like organically becoming interconnected as it develops. And I think that was the idea behind this magazine, which is largely about nature. So as we were discussing all the wind problems, it reminded me of this article I read, or an essay that I read called Winds of Awe and Fear by Nick Hunt, who goes on a world tour looking for famous winds. If you're from California, then everyone knows about the Santa Ana winds, sometimes nicknamed the devil winds, and talks about the effect that wind has on people's psychology. He goes throughout Europe, he goes to the Middle East, and there are ancient stories, because these wind patterns persist throughout the millennia, and they are sort of regular enough, usually marking the transition from one season to another, and they are sometimes disruptive enough in a culture that the culture starts building stories and legends about them and name them. And for example, you've probably heard like the Norse mythologies, like the god of the north, the god of the wind of the south, and that kind of thing. What's interesting is that we as Westerners think of that as a god that controls the wind, another god in the south that controls the south wind. That's not how it actually works. The wind is the god. He's not controlling anything. Like when it comes up from the south and hits you and dries out all of your crops overnight, for example, that is the god visiting your land and blighting it in some way. So it's a physical presence of God that you can feel in your hair, in your eyeballs, and it can be persistent enough that it causes neurological problems because nothing stands still. There's audio fatigue because your ears are constantly out, feeling for is there something hidden in that noise, something I need to worry about. The leaves never stop moving. Everything is moving. There are some that are called the grape dryers because there was a problem for vineyards. There were hot winds that would come in and just destroy your vineyard overnight. And here's one. This is towards the end of the essay, I think. Astonished by how much I'd been affected, the essayist was complaining about migraines and headaches and starting to feel overtired and muscle cramps and that kind of thing. And clearly a glutton for punishment, I headed there next to follow the path of the, quote, wind of madness down the bank of the River Rhone through Ardèche and Provence towards the Mediterranean Sea. Here's the part. The tales I heard of this whistling northerly were less of depression than of madness. It makes you crazy, people said. It blows for odd number of days, 1, 3, 5, 7. And historically, if you committed a crime on the 9th day of Mistral, this would count as a mitigating factor when you went before the judge. I heard similar claims about the Faune. If you could prove that it was the wind that tipped your sanity over the edge and made you stab your neighbor with a pitchfork, you stood a good chance of receiving leniency in court. I was never able to find evidence for any of this, but that's almost beside the point. As with all myths, it is not necessarily true, but what it says is true. The wind is a maddening factor, a threat to our civilized selves. You know what else is maddening? Construction! See, but that's kind of the thing. There's a persistent noise, and it starts getting into your head and doing something to you. As in, I just had a real, you saw it on camera, an actual burst of aggression and madness. Because we only have the short time to record this thing, and everything was quiet until we get up here and someone starts doing housework. I don't know how much of this we're going to be able to get rid of in post, but I'll make sure you hear that. And you know, so that's a plug for Emergence Magazine, and I also want to point out that in the current issue, which won't be current by the time this thing goes live, is an audio essay podcast by friend of the show, David Haskell.
Wow.
Who has an audio essay called "When the Earth Started to Sing." It covers from when plants and animals on this earth started to make noise and how noise became an environmental evolutionary factor and an environmental pressure to respond to.
And if you haven't heard it already, you should make sure to go back to our first season and check out our interview with David Haskell, where he took us on a hike and sort of explained to us the epic story that happen when a tree falls in the woods. Mm-hmm. It's really astounding.
Yeah, it's one of the best episodes, I think.
Yeah.
It was early on, and we blew it right at the beginning. Okay, so that's all the informational stuff. You have anything else? Because otherwise, I'm going to read your thing. Now, I don't have to read this. This is from Harper's. I do this occasionally. There's actually, you can watch this on YouTube, and I'll put the link. But I would like to perform it.
Okay, sure.
Because I like to get your reaction to my performances. And I think the people like it. All right. First of all, I liked the way that Harper's comes up with clever titles for these little sidebars. This one is Ethernal Damnation.
Okay.
From a video statement posted in January by Eli Regalado, the pastor of an online-only Christian church based in Denver. Regalado and his wife, Caitlin Regalado, were charged with fraud by the Colorado Division of Securities for selling INDXcoin, a cryptocurrency described by one auditor as, quote, unsafe, unsecure, and riddled with serious technical problems. Okay, so this is him going online. This is his sort of apology.
Okay.
Hello, INDXcoin family. Let me come out first and foremost by saying that Caitlin and I are being charged with selling millions of dollars of cryptocurrency deemed worthless by the state. We're charged with pocketing $1.3 million, and I just want to say that those charges are true. $500,000 went to the IRS, and a few $100,000 went to a home remodel that the Lord told us to do. How this whole thing started, this is important, I've never heard this excuse before, and that's not true, I have. How this whole thing started is the Lord took us into cryptocurrency. a different currency from INDX.coin. That cryptocurrency turned out to be a scam, is basically the best way I can describe it. And I said, Lord, you told me to do this. Now there's people involved. What do you want me to do? And the Lord said, I want you to build this the way that it should be done. And so I'm like, where's the liquidity going to come from? And the Lord said, trust me. So we keep moving along. God keeps confirming. God keeps showing up. We launched INDXcoin. We were sowing hundreds of thousands of dollars. We were under the impression that God was going to provide, that the source was never ending. But things started falling apart, and that's when, I mean, I'll just be honest, Caitlin and I turned on each other. I shouldn't have spent this, shouldn't have done that, shoulda, coulda, woulda. I don't want anyone getting mad at the prosecutors. They have to do this. I mean, if you think about it, we sold cryptocurrency with no clear exit. We did. We took God at his word and sold cryptocurrency with no clear exit. And the prosecutors have to say, these people willingly sold a cryptocurrency with no clear exit. What we're praying for is that God will work a miracle in the financial sector. God is not done with this project. God is not done with INDXcoin. Amen.
Go ahead, blame God
I know,
for your problems. Well, we just trusted God, man. What do you want us to do?
I know it's a beautiful blame shifting from like, hey, I'm just as surprised as you are. I mean, I sold you this index, this Bitcoin thing, and I don't know what happened. But I mean, if you want someone to blame him.
The Well is produced, edited, and recorded by Anson Mount and me, Branan and Anson. Theme music written by Jonathan Myberg and performed by Branan and Anson. Until next time, have a good time.